Hi.
Hey.
With us is Rob Entrekin from Finn Hill Winery.
How are you?
Oh, hello.
We're actually tasting his wines, his new releases. It's like a world premiere, right? And thank you for joining us.
I haven't met you yet, so I'm glad to meet you virtually.
You have to meet this guy. So Rob Entrekin was my very first partner for a wine tasting show.
Good.
Actually, Rob was one of the very first few people that suggested, "Hey, you've been bringing people to Woodinville like for years now. Maybe you should do it for money." Over summarizing, of course. But yes, I need to get the two of you together. I think you need to try his wines. Carrie, she is from Woodinville Wine Blog, volunteer writer. Awesome person. She also started the Woodinville Wine Industry Food Pantry for those in the wine industry that may find some challenges. We can talk about that if you like, Carrie.
Yeah, I'd like to know more about that. If you could tell me a little bit about that, Carrie, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, I started the food pantry like 3 or 4 weeks ago because I was horrified to see how many restaurant workers and wine tasting industry people were being laid off. Yeah, and the wine industry folks are a little better off because they usually have a spouse or partner that has a day job or a better job, but they don't get paid a lot. So luckily, Chef Anne-Marie donated part of her warehouse for me to start storing up some food. And I have years of experience, unfortunately, running food pantries. I wish we didn't need them, but we do.
Really?
So we're currently open and available. We don't ask to see anybody's ID or their rent or their paychecks or anything. Just, honor system. Come on in and pick up food. And we're open Thursdays and Fridays, noon to 3.
And where are you located, or where is the pantry located?
It is at Chef Anne-Marie's around the back.
Okay.
So, warehouse district, but not ours in Hill. Yeah.
Tell me, have you opened the wine yet?
No, I haven't. I've sort of been waiting to get your direction since this is your production.
Well, I just wanted to have a conversation because this is not really structured yet.
Yeah.
Of course, if I want to have like a formal, more structured and consistent a form of, I don't know, podcast or whatever, of course I'll get into it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But for now, I really wanted to catch up with you guys. And when you mentioned you wanted to try your wines live, I thought that's a great idea.
Well, tell you what. Why don't I go through and do I'll do my rosé and talk about it just a little bit, and that way you'll have some B-roll that you can edit to do whatever you want to with.
Absolutely, go ahead.
And then we can talk about.
Let's pretend in your tasting room.
Yeah, exactly. And then I can talk about my food pairing choice with that too.
Yes, thank you very much. Let's go ahead with that.
Sure. Okay. Well, we have a world premiere today. This is our 2019 Rosé of Sangiovese. It was bottled on March the 9th, just before the stay-home order went into effect. So we got very lucky in that regard. It's made from Sangiovese grapes from Rosebud Vineyard, which is owned by a really nice young man and his family, Chip Dobson, over in Mattawa, Washington. He and his family have been farming wine grapes since the 80s. His grandfather bought the land specifically to do that, and they have, I think, 220 acres of grapes, which is that's a big vineyard. So I've gotten a lot of fruit from Chip in the past, Cabernet Sauvignon and Sauvignon Blanc and Malbec and Sangiovese for Rosé and a bunch of other stuff, and he does a great job. So this is going to be a dry style rosé. I'm going to open it here. Listen for the noise. Yeah, that's good. I've really gravitated towards screw tops for white wines and rosé. I think it's really nice. As you probably know, a rosé wine is typically made by destemming and crushing red grapes, which in this case are the Sangiovese grapes. And then we press off the juice after it's been soaking for, in this case, about 24 hours. So it's just enough time for the juice to pick up some color. Let me see if you can see that color a little bit better. And every year it comes out a little bit different. Here's a bottle from last year, and you can see that last year in 2018 it was a little bit lighter in color. It's the one I think that yeah, Ramon, you've got that one. And so it's a little bit darker this year. That's just the way winemaking works. It's the ingredients are different every year. So I've got a glass here. I'm going to pour myself a taste. Glug, glug, glug. Beautiful color.
Yep.
Perfectly clear, crystal clear.
Definitely, the color is definitely more intense than what I have here.
Yeah.
This one is a little bit more like a bright pink, whereas that's more like a deep salmon color.
Yeah. It's not quite as orange as a salmon color. It's a little pinker than that, but it is darker for sure.
Yeah. You see this one?
Yeah. Right. So it's just opening up on the nose. What I get first is kind of a savory note. It's kind of an herbal note, followed by kind of a, it's a hint of maybe grapefruit. And it's a little cold. I like to drink rosés a little warmer than refrigerator temperature. A lot of people just keep them in the fridge and pull them out and pour them. My rule of thumb is when you pour the wine into the glass, if you get condensation on the outside of the wine glass, it was probably too cold for my preference. I know a lot of people like that really cold, crisp, refreshing taste, and it's great on a hot summer day. But I just think in terms of releasing the aromas and the flavor, it's a little bit nicer if it's just above fridge temperature. So maybe 50 degrees rather than 40 or 38 degrees, which is what you'd normally get out of the fridge.
I see what you mean too, and I've heard and also experienced myself that when things in general, especially liquids, are too cold, the first thing that happens when they hit your mouth is that it numbs the sense.
Yeah,
it kind of numbs it. And in the case of wine, spirits, and beer, that doesn't really help either, because the alcohol doesn't help, right?
Unless it's Jägermeister.
Well, yeah, but
which case you want to numb your taste buds. I think
that's true. But the Jägermeister reminds me more of the cold medicine I had when I was a little kid, because that's what it tastes like.
Yeah, so, I agree.
Yeah. Well, anyways. Let's talk about good things now. Keep wine, please.
All right, so I'm going to give this a taste for the first time. Well, really nice. It's crisp on the front of the palate, but it's not tart or sour at all. Mm-hmm. It maintains that crispness through the mid palate, which is really quite fruity, and there's no sweetness in the finish. It has a totally dry taste to it. I know that from the analysis of the wine, there's probably 0.3% of residual sugar, which is not unusual in a dry wine. Usually wines can be up to 0.5% residual sugar and still taste dry, depending on how much acid they have in them to begin with. But for me, for white wines and rosés, the whole trick is balance. You want whatever residual sweetness is there to balance out with the natural acidity of the grape. so that it has a pleasing balance. And this tastes very balanced to me.
So I noticed that you kind of smacked your mouth a couple of times before you started describing the wine, and I've seen this happen a lot of times with I mean, in myself and other people, that usually happens when there's some tannins in the wine. What do you feel, besides the acidity of the wine, that makes that kind of made you have that reaction of doing the, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think there's two different things going on here. Number one is that lip smacking is part of me sucking air in over my tongue when there's wine on my tongue. That helps just open up the wine, and I don't know, it just helps me taste some of the more subtle flavors that are there. So that's really what the noise comes from.
Mm-hmm.
But you make a really good point about tannins, because we all know about tannins in red wine.
Right.
But in rosé, we don't really think about it. But there's actually some tannin in rosé as well. And you can tell because there's a little bit of color. If it wasn't for that color,
which comes from the
that
skin.
means it came from the skin, and that's where tannins come from as well. Mostly that's where they come from. So where I perceive tannin in a rosé is not in the front or the mid palate, it's in the finish. So, you know, if you have a very astringent red wine with a ton of tannin, it'll be kind of that puckery, dry feeling. You don't get that from a rosé because there's not enough tannin to do that. But what you do get is you just get a little hint of, I call it grip. You can feel just a little bit of grip in the finish.
Grip.
Just enough of tannin to feel it. It's a mouth feel. It's not a taste. It's not an aroma. It's what it feels like in your mouth. And in this case, I think it's very pleasant. And you know, I think that I've tasted rosés that are typically the darker they are, the more of that grip they have. And some people don't like it, but I think it's actually a nice characteristic because it helps balance food pairing. So if you're having something that's kind of, let's say a classic pairing with rosé is goat cheese, goat cheese and say, you know, rosemary crackers or rosemary bread, something like that. You know, the goat cheese is very creamy, and if you have not only the acid but a little bit of tannin, it helps sort of cut through that creaminess and balance the pairing.
Yeah, but it's very creamy, but it's usually very also
it's tart,
tart or briny, I'd say.
Yeah, both of those things.
No, it feels like a preserve of sorts, right? You have that. I don't know. Can I say pickliness?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Sure, yeah, because it's a biological product that's gone through from its own fermentation, and it produces lactic acid from the lactose sugar that's in the milk. So that's why, to me, I've always thought of goat cheese as having a little bit of tartness to it.
Mm-hmm. That's
in a good way.
Right. And I like it because I like those cheeses. Any cheese that will make me. I have this particular feeling when I have certain foods. Goat cheese is one of them, and about cheeses in general. Old cheeses do that.
Yeah.
They give me this feeling. You probably seen me do this, right?
Yeah.
Right. But they get me like right here. It's like somebody's grabbing me by the sides.
It's like right at the very back of where your jaw is.
Right underneath the earlobe.
Yeah.
I feel like it's completely overwhelming, and I kind of like that. Goat cheese is one of those, and let me see, old age Gouda, like 8 months or 2 years or whatever, and that sort of thing. And what else can you tell us about the one you just tried?
Sure. Let's see. I think I've told you where it's from. We made it. We harvested in September, and did the destemming and what we call I forgot what we call it. It's where you just let it sit there and macerate. That's the word I was looking for. Maceration is not
You're
a word.
getting old, Rob.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting old. Maceration just means that you let the grape solids and skins stay in contact with the juice. It's kind of like soaking. But anyway, we did that back in September. We macerated for 24 hours and then pressed it off. And then that pressed off juice, which was pink, went into a stainless steel tank. We fermented for about probably 14 days, very slowly at a very cold temperature. I believe personally that when making white wines and rosé as well, because rosé technically is made the same way as a white wine is made, just made from a red grape. So I always think of rosé as a white wine, even though it's not, white.
Yeah, actually, you are the one who, from whom I've learned. You taught me that a rosé is a red grape with not enough contact, and then treat it like a white wine.
That's right. So I always like to ferment white wines and rosé at the coolest possible temperatures that the yeast will still continue doing their job, because I think that if you let them get too warm during fermentation, all this carbon dioxide that's generated by the yeast tends to blow off some of the aromatic content of the wine. So
same thing happens with beer.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to, like, if you want to make an ale, the ideal temperature is between 68 and 72. If it goes higher than that, well, you might get more alcohol, but you'll get no taste. But if it goes lower than that, the yeast might go dormant, and you'll just taste the yeast and not really get enough alcohol out of it.
Yeah. So, and for wine yeast, for wine yeast, that ideal point, at least for me, is about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And I have fermented some wines, some white wines as low as 45 degrees, which is just right on the edge of viability for the yeast. But that was my ice wine that I made in 2013, and it took 6 months for it to finish fermentation. So when I did my what?
I think I had the 2013 ice one.
Yes, you have. I think you were the first person to say this is my favorite wine.
Yes, actually, that was during my very first visit, if I recall correctly. 2013, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it would have been in 2014 or 15. Yeah.
14 or 15. It's been a while. I'm getting old too. So
time flies.
Yep.
So let me talk about the what I would pair with this, since this is a virtual brunch. I always think about brunch. Brunch is just breakfast with a slice of cantaloupe on the side. That's an old joke.
True, or I'd say brunch is the new name for steak and eggs.
Yeah, could be. Well, the thing of it is, you can have almost any breakfast food and almost any lunch food for brunch and still be legit. But for me, when I think about brunch, here's one of the things I think about. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's really super easy to do as a little, use it as an appetizer course, like as part of your brunch, or just a side dish. And that is prosciutto wrapped melon. And this is a very classic Italian thing that's been around forever. You can do it. I've got some cantaloupe here. I also have some honeydew melon, and you can also do it with watermelon. It's just the watermelon is not very good this time of year, so I didn't get any. And you just go to your local supermarket, deli, or wherever you buy your meat. You go to Costco and buy this. A slice of prosciutto is maybe a little bit too big for one piece, which is supposed to be bite sized. So I kind of pull it in half lengthwise, and then just wrap it around the melon, and then secure it with a toothpick, or if you want to be fancy, I've got these little cocktail skewers.
You brought out the good stuff.
Brought out the good stuff, yeah. And you could do that Here's one that I already did with cantaloupe. Here's one with honeydew, and these pair extremely well with a nice crisp rosé, a dry rosé. So let's try it.
So I'm thinking while you chew as well. I'm thinking that the saltiness from the prosciutto will make it does make a good contrast with the sweetness and to a point wateriness of the cantaloupe and the honeydew.
Yeah,
it's mostly water, anyways. Prosciutto is not really too salty, while the cantaloupe and honeydew are not really too sweet.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Now, here's my. And I see that I probably like it. No, it's not gonna be my favorite because my personal preference does not lean towards prosciutto a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, because everybody loves it. I like it. I just don't love it. What other alternatives besides prosciutto would you pair with the Sangio?
Well, another classic pairing, especially for brunch, is a quiche. Any kind of quiche that you like.
Nice.
I like the classic quiche Lorraine with a little bit of bacon, and other people like other treatments of quiche. You can have a completely vegetarian quiche.
You got me at bacon.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if there's a way to make a vegan quiche because I don't know how you make a quiche without eggs, but I'm sure there's probably a way to do it. Just another little side thing. I mean, this is like if you're just trying to figure out how to throw together a quick brunch, you can never go wrong just with a few mixed nuts. These are salted mixed nuts from Costco. I always like to have some San Pellegrino or some non-alcoholic sparkling alternative for folks.
Right.
And
that also helps to clean the palate.
Absolutely.
Because the effervescence and the water itself. So instead of rinsing the glass, you can just rinse your mouth and use the same glass. And this tip is particularly for people that go wine that are serial wine tasters like I am.
Yeah.
Right.
You mean you have wine with your cereal?
Not about maybe I'll do that tomorrow.
I was gonna say that could be a new brunch thing, Lucky Charms and wine. Well,
I was thinking more like I don't know. I probably would do something like checks with a Malbec or something, right?
The corn checks, the wheat checks, or the rice checks? That's the question.
No, not the corn checks. Corn is completely overrated and overused. I would probably do the wheat, right?
Yeah.
Man, just cereal with wine. Oh my God, you threw me off on that one.
So let me try the other wine. This is another world premiere of my late harvest Semillon. As we talked about earlier, in 2013, I made a wine that's very similar to this. The grapes come from Rosebud Vineyard, again, Chip Dobson in Mattawa. But in 2013, we left the grapes hang until December, and we got a hard freeze. So the grapes were actually picked when they were frozen. We transported them in a refrigerated truck so they would stay frozen, brought them over here to Woodinville, and we pressed them while they were still frozen. And for folks that know about ice wine, this is the typical process that's used in Germany and Canada, where a lot of ice wine is made. And the key thing, there's two factors that are important to ice wine. Number one is you let the grapes hang for 3 months longer than they normally would before they're harvested, maybe 4 months longer compared with how you would. So these are white grapes, so you would normally pick them maybe in September to make a dry white wine. But if you leave them hang until September or till December, they start to dry out and shrivel up, kind of like raisins.
Right.
And that loss of water concentrates the sugar and concentrates all the flavors as well. And that's one of the key factors in making either a late harvest or an ice wine. And then if you get lucky enough with the weather and you have a hard freeze and you can press the grapes while they're frozen, what happens is that inside the frozen grape, the ice crystals bind up even more water. So the juice that does come out is like syrup. It's very, very thick and very concentrated. And that's what we were lucky enough to be able to do in 2013. So this year, 2019, these are the same grapes from the same block. These vines are some of the oldest in Washington. They're about 40 years old. These Semillon vines, they look like tree trunks. You know, they're really big and gnarly. We also let the grapes hang until the first week in December, and we did the weather had been flirting with freezing. It got down below freezing at night, and then would get up above freezing during the day. So they actually probably froze and thawed 2, 3, 4 times before we harvested them. But when we picked them, they were really not fully frozen. So yeah.
Isn't that a little bit risky having that freeze thaw? Isn't that a little bit that sounds like? I mean, of course, I'm not a vintner, I'm not a winemaker, but as you pointed out earlier in the video, I'm an analyst, right? But that frozen thaw points to somewhat of a inconsistency that tells me, well, that could be a high risk for, I mean, the grape and the winemaker. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So it is. You're right. It is risky because usually what happens when grapes freeze is it basically starts to break down the skin a little bit, and then that means that those little microscopic holes in the skin are entry point for infection, bacteria, mold, and things that probably you don't want, that aren't going to help your wine. There is this mold called botrytis that is also called the noble rot, and it's
isn't that the one that you actually like in your ice wine?
Yeah. So I'm just saying that not all fungi are equal, right? Some of these molds are good molds, and some of them are bad molds, and just like people. So
whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, so it is risky. You are, I mean, there's only increasing risk to the quality of the fruit the longer you let it hang. So whenever you do an ice wine or a late harvest, it's a balance between, okay, where are the grapes in terms of their sugar content and their health, and you don't want to let them linger too long, but you don't want to harvest them too soon, because one of the whole points of this is to try to get the residual sugar in the juice well into the 30% range. And when we harvested our ice wine in 2013, the residual sugar was 37% in the juice. This time the residual sugar at harvest was 34%. So it wasn't quite as concentrated as if it had been frozen, but it was pretty close. So
I don't think that us as humans can really feel a difference that close.
Probably not. I mean, sweet is sweet, and yeah. So, and I think you tasted this juice. I think I gave you a sample of this.
I still have the bottle you gave me. We're about to pitch.
Yeah.
That was what? Yeah, last year. Anyways.
Well, it would have been in December.
I still have that bottle, and I just remembered I didn't bring it to show to everybody. Hey, this is what. Never mind.
That's okay.
My fridge. I still haven't decided what to do with it. Initially, I wanted to try vodka, then gin, then rum, and then I just said, you know what? I'll just let the juice sit there, and whenever I run out of ideas, I'll use it.
Well, God only knows what you've actually ended up with. So I would, if you want to taste it before you throw it away, be careful.
I will. Well, so half of it's gone because I just drank it with ice.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. The other half is what I want to make a cocktail out of. But
Yeah.
it's not like I mean, if you go to a bar, a restaurant, or any let's say even weird exotic places where they make cocktails,
Yeah.
they don't have late harvest.
No. No, they don't.
So I have
Nobody does.
right. I have nothing to go on from. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
So let me go ahead and open this. As we talked about before, this was fermented at a very cold temperature. I think we kept the temperature about 50 degrees. And it didn't take 6 months this time. It only took about a month and a half before we were ready to stop.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that was the case?
Well, because when I did the ice wine, I kept it at 45 degrees, which is just on the point of the yeast not being able to survive. So it really extended the fermentation time. This was at 50 degrees, and so it was a little bit more benign. The yeast were able to handle it better. But it never. I think the sugar. We follow the fermentation by measuring the amount of sugar in the juice over time. And it never changed by more than 0.5% or maybe 1% in a week. So it's very slow, very slow. So anyway, I'm going to open this guy up. There's the noise we all like. Would you like to inspect the cork?
Okay, it looks a little bit light, and the sound was a little bit dry.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that you were storing this bottle upright.
Yeah, this was stored upright, but it wouldn't have probably changed that much. So for dessert wine, I've got these nice little thistle glasses, these little stemmed thistle-shaped glasses. They're good for port. They're good for sherry. They're good for dessert wine. So,
is there a name to that design?
Pardon me?
Is there a name to that glass design? Because it looks like a tulip.
Just dessert wine. I don't know. There probably is a name. Maybe somebody out there knows it. I just looked for them until I saw the shape that I wanted. So I mean, a typical serving for this kind of a wine. I didn't tell you that when we were all done with fermentation and we bottled it, we ended up with 17.9%. I'll just call it 18% for the sake of our argument. 18% residual sugar, so it's still quite sweet.
Mm-hmm.
And then the alcohol is very low because we didn't let very much of the sugar get converted into alcohol by the fermentation process. So the alcohol is only 8.7%. Now, I'm not recommending that you drink a whole bottle of this because you might go into a diabetic coma if you did, but it's not going to make you drunk. It's not like port, which is usually around 18 or 20% alcohol.
You mind if I rephrase that? I think it's not going to make you feel drunk, but it's still going to make you illegal to drive.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right? Because we need to be conscious, right?
Of course. The other thing is that, I'm not using a regular wine glass because you don't pour a regular wine glass size serving of a sweet wine like this. A typical serving of a dessert wine is 2 ounces, where a typical pour for a dry white wine like the Rosé we just had would be somewhere between 4 and 6 ounces. So I'm just going to go ahead and pour about 2 ounces. And I think you can see it.
You know what? I know that there might be some loss because the signal, but what I want to say is that it doesn't look syrupy.
No, it's not syrupy. It's a little bit, it's hard to describe. It's a little bit more viscous than a dry white wine, but it's not like pancake syrup by any means.
Right.
The other thing I was going to say is that when you talk about dessert wines, we typically focus on the sugar,
Right.
but we really don't talk about the other element, which is just as important, which is the amount of natural grape acid, the tartaric acid that's present in the wine. If you don't have any acidity, this is one of the things that as a winemaker we're very conscious of. If you let the grapes hang too long, all of the acid basically becomes oxidized or metabolized by the grapes, and there's nothing left. So when you make the wine and you make it sweet, it's like it is like drinking pancake syrup. It's not pleasant, but you have to have enough acid in order to balance the sugar. So back to this idea of balance is always important in winemaking.
So the acid and the sugar are kind of like the yin and yang to winemaking. Is that basically what this means?
That's a perfect analogy. I like that.
All right, I should trademark that.
You should. So like in any wine tasting, the first thing we do is we look. We see that it's perfectly crystal clear. We look at the color. It's what we would call a light straw color. It means it's just a little bit yellow, but not very dark. And then the next thing we do is we give it a little swirl and we stick our nose in the glass. Ooh. Man, this is so aromatic. It's my first impression is a caramel apple, like at the county fair.
A carnival?
Yeah, like a candy apple, I guess I should say. And it has a note of pear and apple and just a hint of citrus, maybe. It's really nice. It actually has a lot more nose than the ice wine did from 2013. The other thing I just want to mention, so many people that came in and bought the ice wine because it has the word ice in the name. They thought that meant it needed to be super cold when they served it. And
No.
that's not the case at all, and it's certainly not the case with this. I would use the same rule that we used for the rosé, which is it needs to be a little bit warmer than refrigerator temperature. So if you were if you have it in the refrigerator to keep it, I would take it out and let it warm up at room temperature for an hour or so before you consume it.
That is exactly what I do. In fact, this morning when you texted me, hey, chill the rosé, remember?
Yeah, you're right.
It was already chilled when I sent the picture. But this morning when I got up, I took it out of the chiller and let it rest for an hour before I poured my first glass. I know an hour could be a little bit extreme for some people, but again, just like wine and I dare say anything else, it's personal preference, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Whether it is wine or soda or water or food, I've always liked it as close to my body temperature as possible.
Yeah.
But that's just my own personal individual preference, right?
Sure.
Right, absolutely. In general terms, when we're addressing the masses, we can say, hey, if you right, the recommendations that we see in the news and the newspapers and the journals and all due respect, like winemakers such as yourself. But the distinction here is that you as a winemaker, you know your wines better than anybody else does. So when you're saying this particular wine, I will let it rest for a little bit after chilling it.
Yeah.
Then that particular or personal perspective that you're bringing comes from knowing the wine itself, not of any personal bias. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's clearly personal bias, but, I guess the point you're making is that, the person who makes the wine probably has spent more time with it. It's not a generic recommendation that's just applied across the board. It's a specific recommendation.
It's like, if you don't mind the analogy, it's like, who knows their children better than their parents?
Yeah.
Right?
Point taken.
It's sort of like the wine. You made the wine, so you probably
They
know
are my children, that's for sure.
Yes, I mean, in that sense.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm going to give this my first taste now. And again, I haven't tasted this since it was bottled 5-6 weeks ago. Oh, I'm also now getting a little bit of a aroma of, how would I describe it as hay or new mown hay or alfalfa or fresh cut grass, a little bit something like that on the nose.
Can we call it general terms for people that have never tried any of those as farm country?
Yeah, in a pleasant way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to taste this now. Interesting. I never try to make a judgment on wine until I've had 2 sips of it, because it's the first one kind of primes your palate, and the second one is where you really taste what's there.
Yeah, gets you ready for it.
It does have a little bit more of a more viscous mouthfeel, but it's not syrupy.
I call it.
Yeah, you did. The first thing I get is just a little bit of a tingle on the tongue from, I guess, from the acid. Maybe there's a little bit of dissolved CO2 still in the wine, but it's not fizzy. It's just I just get a little tickle on the front of my tongue. And then I get in the mid, it's definitely kind of a fruit, honey, apple cider, concentrated pear, fruit leather, maybe something like that. Very concentrated flavor. But I get the fruit. I don't get the sweet immediately on the front of the palate. And then after 2 or 3 seconds, then that kind of builds, and I get the sweetness in the mid palate, but it's not too saccharine or overpowering. It's just a very pleasant sweetness. And then in the finish, it's interesting because I think in the ice wine it stayed sweet on the finish, but this stays sweet, but it's got some acid to balance it, so it really feels very centered to me. I don't know how to describe it any better. It doesn't taste too sweet at all to my palate. Now, some people will hate it because they don't like sweet wines, and that's fine.
They can ask club soda if they don't like sweet.
That's right. That's right.
I know it's a sacrilege, but that's a sacrilege I love, by the way.
I think you'll like this, Ramon, when you try it.
I'm looking forward to it.
So my pairing suggestion for this is actually very simple, and that's really just fresh berries. We don't, I'm sorry, say again.
So it's not a dessert wine as much as it is a snacking wine. In that sense.
Well, I would say it's a dessert.
Dessert?
Yeah. I would consider it to be a dessert or an after dinner wine.
Okay.
Now, some people might use it as an aperitif. And it's a a classic pairing for a first course in a very fancy French restaurant would be a French sauterne, which is very similar to this, very sweet, made from Semillon with foie gras. But that is so rich. I don't like it myself.
Yeah, I have my reservations too. The foie gras is, I don't know.
And it's not vegan either.
Oh, I don't care.
Yeah, I know. So anyway, I would use this as at the end of the evening, where you might use a port or a sherry or any other dessert wine. And for me, the classic pairing with this is something fresh and clean and fruity, like fresh berries. So I have, little bowl here that's got some fresh raspberries and strawberries, and you know, you can just serve them in a bowl to people, or you can do what I'm doing now, which is to make it a little bit more très elegant. Just put them on a skewer, and then serve them with the ice wine.
I'm not laughing at what you're doing. This is great. Don't get me wrong. It's just that for some reason my mind flew back to the COVID-19, regulations or whatever, measurements and what's that has been doing to people staying at home. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, Rob. You can't deny you've also been a victim of these measurements. This is way too elaborate for not being social.
Exactly. Well, I just didn't want to pick them up with my fingers. That's really all it boiled down to.
Well, but you know what? Me too. I usually cook for other people. I pride myself in being a great host. And now, yes, I've been cooking. I guess a little bit more frequent than usual, but at the same time not as much, because I cook once or twice a week. But since I live, I'm here by myself. Every time I cook for at least 2 people.
Yeah.
And which means that's basically 6 people for me, because I have a small stomach, right?
Yeah.
After surgery. So I'm like, yeah, I can relate to what people on the internet are saying. And then I see you, this is the skewer, the fruits, and you're like, that's way too elaborate for
yeah, I know. It's
right?
I mean, you would, if you were at home, you'd just grab a handful of raspberries and throw them in your mouth. So, I get it.
Of course. It kind of like potato chips, like grab and munch, right?
But this is sort of a serving suggestion. If you're having friends over, you wanna look like you're a good host, right?
Yes, of course.
So anyway, this is I mean, these are obviously not even in season up here in North America. These are probably imported from Mexico or someplace, but they taste fantastic.
Probably Peru and Chile, and I can trust me. I can buy that. I worked for.
You know where they come from.
Yes, probably Peru and Chile.
But they still taste fantastic with this ice wine. So I would highly recommend it. Another thing I can tell you is we get it. It won't be too long now before we start to get into our own fresh berry season here in Washington, and we'll have fresh raspberries and fresh strawberries, and it'll be 10 times better than this. But this is fantastic the way it is.
Well, especially from Yakima Valley. We're what's my watch? So Yakima has a lot, some of the best tree and berry fruit. Yeah, comes from Washington State.
Well, yeah, Western Washington is really the berry capital. I mean, tree fruit from Eastern Washington and berries from Western Washington. The other thing I just want to always put a pitch in for this is that when we get into late summer and we start getting our own Western or Eastern Washington peaches, for me, that's absolutely the best pairing with these sweet dessert wines. Fresh peaches, nothing else, just nothing but fresh peaches, and sliced up in a bowl or put on a skewer, as you will, and then have it with this dessert wine. The other thing that is a variation on that is you can grill fresh peaches, and you probably have done. Yeah, so grilled peaches and this late harvest Semillon wine is fantastic.
I wonder if we can skewer some peaches and kind of, I don't know if it's the correct term, but kind of baste them with that wine and just grill them at high heat. So I kind of caramelize a little bit. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, let your imagination run wild. I mean, as you wish.
Well, if I want to be cynical, I'd say after I buy your wine, what do you care?
Well, I care that actually when you take it home, that you, first of all, that you take care of it so that it doesn't go bad before you drink it, and that when you do drink it, you have a good experience. So, you know, it's not quite done when it walks out my door.
Wow. Wow. Shit. Sorry. I didn't mean to, because this is being recorded, but what you just said is really powerful, Rob, because of course what I said, it was meant like a joke, right? Like what,
Of course.
after I buy it from you. But when you said that, you know, that it's basically that your work doesn't end at the point of sale,
Right.
you know.
My work ends when it goes into your mouth.
Right. I think it's really meaningful, really meaningful, especially for not just for you, but for all your fellow, I'd say, craft winemakers, right?
Absolutely.
It's not like you're making 2 million cases a year, right?
No. Well, you know, I think that our passion for what we do is really only culminated when you experience that passion by drinking the wine, and I have to put a plug in here for Alex, my son, who runs the tasting room. That's part of what he's trying to convey to the people that come in and taste our wines, is both that passion that we have and our enthusiasm for wine, and also as trying to help educate those people who want to know more about wine, to make sure that they have a good experience with it. So it really is something that we care about. We want people to have a good experience, and we want them to enjoy our wine. We want them to enjoy everybody's wine. It's not just all about us.
Here's what besides your wines, but here's what I loved, or I should say, fell in love with about Finn Hill Winery. I don't mean you're not my type, but the winery.
Oh, come on.
No, you're not. But the winery itself is that, and of course I'm making I'm trying to achieve some level of abstraction from all of this, because we've been friends for a while. So I'm just thinking, strictly as a customer, is that I came in and remember Groupon, but for me, almost instantly, it was not about the consumer experience, meaning I'm there just to go wine tasting and do as many wine tastings as possible to get drunk. No.
Yeah.
Or because I came in with a Groupon, get as many bargains as I can. Immediately, you and later Alex, because I came with a Groupon more than once, and you know that.
Mm-hmm.
It was not just about the experience itself, but about the knowledge. And this is something today with my tours. Whenever I go to Finn Hill, I tell them, okay, Finn Hill started it because the owner, you, basically was curious about how is it possible that, and of course we can refer people to you or to the video telling your story about how you got to wine tasting, but how you were able to transmit and share that even with myself at the time, just a Groupon looking for a target, right?
Yeah. And
how you were able to you and Alex were able to share your knowledge and your experience and connect with the people. That only, to an extent, that only makes your wine better.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because you can buy, you can go to any grocery store, buy a bottle of wine, enjoy it. It's a great wine, awesome wine, and maybe you'll buy it again. But it's very different when you come into Finn Hill Winery, and relate to the wine and to the owners. to the cellar master. I'm calling Alex the cellar master.
Sure.
Get to call him something, right?
Yeah.
Everybody likes titles, right? To the winemaker, relate to the winemaker, relate to, to the server or pour, whatever you want to call it, a cellar master, and get the feeling that it's not BS.
Yeah.
It's in the sense that, yes, when you go to Artisan Hill, because honestly, it's not just you. It's also Mike and Lisa from Trio Cups.
Sure.
It's also Mary from down from Lisa from Callan. Even Jim from Icon. It's the personality, the ambiance of the tasting room, the wine themselves is like you're I don't know, releasing a piece of you into all of this. It's really, really, dare I say, personal.
Yeah, it is.
Intimate is a better word. Intimate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And my first experience with that kind of connection was with when I visited your tasting room.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for saying that, because I think both for Alex and for me, this is about making connection with people, and we use wine as the vehicle. Wine, clearly I got into doing this because I love making wine, and I love both the science and the art of winemaking. But I didn't realize at the time when I started making wine in my garage, how multidimensional this whole experience could be, until we started having a tasting room and having people come in and understand that it was really a person-to-person business.
Variables are overwhelming, I should say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's you made a great point, which is you can go to the supermarket and buy a bottle of wine and take it home and drink it, and it's great. But one of the first things I learned from my training at Washington State University, one of our instructors said, I think it was the very first day we were there for an on-site visit, he said, wine tasting is not about the wine. It's about the experience.
Right.
And for most of us, the experience has to do with the fact that we're there with friends, we're there with family. It's a shared experience that we're enjoying together as a as a part of our community. And that's really what I think makes us passionate and interested about sharing our wines with people, because it's a way of expanding our connections in our community.
And hold on, there's someone trying to join us.
Okay.
Carrie, I think it's Carrie from Woodinville Wine Blog, let's say. But anyways, yes, to your point, that is exactly why, well, in practical terms, not exactly why, but that is exactly why wine tasting shuttle still exists. Is because wine tasting is not about the wine, it's about the experience.
So,
say, Rob, yeah, you haven't really released it, but not just for Carrie and myself, but are you planning on having these included in some sort of curbside pickup or delivery or shipping, or
yeah, you bet. We're, like most wineries, we're available by appointment for people to come in and do pickup. One of the reasons why we have we bottle and then we have a release sometime later is to make sure that the wines all settle and are not shocked and things.
Right.
So this is the first time I've tasted it since it was bottled on March the 9th. It tastes fantastic. It's ready now. So we should probably just send out an email to our mailing list to tell people that it's available.
What about those of us that are not part of your club or email list? How can we get in touch with you so we can at least try these wines?
Sure, you can just go on our website, which is www.finnhillwinery, all one word, Finn Hill Winery, Finn, winery @gmail.com. I'm sorry, that's the email. It's finnhillwinery.com is the website.
And you're active on Instagram and Facebook too, I hope, in this day and age.
I'm active on Facebook. I'm not so active on Instagram, and I've been meaning to fix that.
Yay. And you're brave enough to go on video, which I have been yelling and screaming and begging winemakers to do and winery owners to do that more often in their chickens. So I'm very proud of you. Good job.
Well, I think probably in the last 6 weeks, I've done more Zoom and Teams and Skype meetings than I've done in my entire life. So
Yeah.
it's not an issue for me.
Wait. You're still with Phillips, right?
Yeah, I still have a day job.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna try to be there tomorrow.
Great. So I normally cook Italian food on Sundays because I throw a lot of parties. I throw one every week, and that's because it forces me to clean my house because I know people are coming over. Otherwise, I'm like, eh.
Yes.
So I freak out on Friday and start cleaning and shopping on Saturday, but I can't throw parties at my house right now, and I really need to because we have hundreds of bottles of wine in the house that I normally have industry parties and everyone drinks it. So I cook Italian food. What would be the best Finn Hill Winery wine to pair with that? Since you don't make a Sangio red.
It's red, yeah. Okay, so tell me a little bit more. Are you cooking Southern Italian with a red sauce? Are you doing Northern Italian?
I'm doing the easiest red sauce possible. It's out of a jar. I'm sorry to say. I'm a busy lady.
No, that's fine.
A lot of acid.
I just need to know what the pairing was.
And it's vegetarian for me and meatballs for my boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
So think Prego, right? Is that what you're saying?
No, better than Prego. At least I upgrade a little bit to like something that's $9 in the jar.
Okay.
We do have Prego at the food pantry. So
my son really has got a better palate than I do. And I can take some credit for that, both genetically and also because he's had an awful lot of good wine available to him that he wouldn't have otherwise had. But he has told me that he thinks that our Merlots pair really well with red sauce.
ooh.
And that's not something you would normally think of. At least I would not normally think of.
I agree with that part, that you would not normally think a Merlot would pair great with red sauces.
And I bet I have a Merlot somewhere in my wine storage here. Yes.
But
you can be an independent fact verifier.
Right. Like like is this a PhD thesis or something?
Well, that would take a lot of work. That's a lot of wine.
I don't, Carrie, I don't think you'd be against that, would you?
No, I'm willing to be a guinea pig in this case.
Well, Ramon, I know that you're only you're scheduled here to terminate your stream in about 2 minutes. So I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for inviting me to join you. It was a lot of fun. And Carrie, it was great to meet you.
Yes.
I'm sorry that I haven't met you before. I guess you probably have met my son if you've been in here. So
we are terrible about making appointments to come in, and we need to be better about that going forth. This week is our 3rd anniversary, and we don't like to disturb your tasting room customers. So the good news is every time I popped in to say hi, your tasting room was full of people, and so I can't really wave a camera around obnoxiously. So we waved and left. So that's good news for you.
Yeah. Okay.
Again,
well, it's empty right now.
My analytical and solution-oriented mind. Let's have an event where Wine Tasting Shuttle and Woodinville Wine Blog visit the original Wine Tasting Shuttle tour.
Oh, I like this.
Which means going to lunch to Twisted Cuban Cafe, going to Finn Hill Winery, Trio Cups, and then Icon Cellars.
Love it. Does Twisted Cuban have anything vegetarian?
Yes, they have the mixed vegetables. So all of our 4 restaurant partners, I've sat together with them, and we have red meat, white meat, and some sort of vegetarian or vegan sort of alternative, because we want to appeal to as much people as possible.
I
You know?
appreciate that.
And actually, you were in the shooting for the Village Wines, right, with William, and
Yeah.
that was part of it. When you look at the special menu, you'll see that it's just part of the regular menu, but including vegetarian alternatives. So maybe we can have an event together where you can invite your fans over, up to 12 people in total, and we'll visit Rob, and we'll visit Mike, and we'll visit Jim, which are the original wine tasting shuttle tour.
Sounds good.
I'm up for that.
All right. Well,
Carrie-
thank you for inviting me. I'm going to sign off and go put some makeup on before I get on video again. Ah!
You're nice to meet you again, Carrie.
Regardless.
Don't know how to leave.
Thank you for joining us. Hey, Rob, this has been great. I wish we had more time. I also need to get ready to go to, go to Safeway and keep doing my superhero job.
Yeah.
Right? And like I said, I wish we had more time, and I wish we were, trying the wines at the same time.
Yeah.
It's definitely not the same, me having a year older rosé and then follow it with a Kirkland bottle.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining in. If you have a little bit more time tomorrow, Terry is going to be signing in from London. I'm trying to get Summer in as well, and I know you know and love them too. So if you can sign in tomorrow, send me a text or and I'll keep you in the loop. Right.
Okay.
And of course, my virtual hugs to you and to Karen and to Alex and his husband. Stay safe, stay home, stay strong, and I'm looking forward to seeing you when all this is over.
Yeah, me too. Thanks again, Ramon.
All right, have a good day.